Baker leans in. There's the snap. Blitz comes. Mayfield back. Loads. Throws. Picked up by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes.
It is week 1 of the NFL season, and that means the Twentyman in the Huddle podcast is back, and I'm very excited to kick off this year's 20 in the Huddle podcast with Ray Agnew, Assistant General Manager for the Detroit Lions. Ray, thanks for joining me. It's been a little bit. We did this, I think, the Senior Bowl maybe a couple years ago.
Senior Bowl, but thanks for having me.
No, is it exciting now that it's week 1? I mean, the building the roster and the offseason, obviously that's a big part of your job, and camp and whittling it down, but now does it feel like football's here week 1?
Yeah, very exciting, man. You just can't wait to see a full group on the field, all the starters playing and everybody going at once, man. Game planning, getting ready for the Rams, man. So it's exciting.
Is last week bittersweet a little bit, because obviously you've got to make some tough decisions and you've got to end a dream, at least for a moment, for a lot of guys. But then the excitement of, okay, now we've got our 69, right? Now we've got the guys we're going to kind of go to war with for 16 weeks. So is last week a little bit bittersweet for a guy like you?
Yeah, it is bittersweet because there's some kids you get attached to, and then you have to tell a kid something he's never been told before, that he's not good enough. And then some of them, they go on and play with other teams, but some of them, that's their last game, their last chance, so it's tough. But at the same time, you're excited. You get your group together, and it's time, okay, let's go, make a run at this thing.
I don't know if it was you or Brad who made the comment, but it's important to talk about the 69-man roster and not just the 53, right? And how important and how much time do you and Brad spend on getting that practice squad together, and you've got some veteran guys on there? Because you're going to need every guy. It's not a matter of if injuries are going to happen, it's when, right? Yeah. And so why is it important to talk about the 69?
Oh, it's very important because you just said it. You're going to need all of those guys. And those guys are told when they're on that practice squad, look, we're going to need you at some point this year. You're going to get a chance to play. And the majority of those guys, they end up playing, and some get signed to the active roster. So it's very important to get football players on that 16-man practice squad.
Get football players. I think you guys think you got some good football players on defense too, and obviously there's some of the struggles down the stretch last year into the playoffs on that side of the football. I think we both agree that offensively, with what's coming back and the offensive line, that's a pretty strong unit. But you and Brad knew that you had to get better on the other side of the ball. How do you guys think you did that?
We're excited about some of the guys obviously trading for Carlton, and then drafting those 2 corners early. And those guys have lived up to who we thought they would be. Excited about Hutch and Aleem, and Levi. Levi's playing really well. Yeah. And then Marcus Davenport brings physicality to the game. So we're excited about all those guys, man, and what they bring to the table. The growth of some of Campbell and Derek Barnes, some of those guys, they're getting better and better, so we're excited about our defense. And then AG, with his creative mind, so we're happy. Look forward to seeing it.
With McNeil and DJ Reader, obviously a big one too. We'll see if we have him this week, but he's
no question. I can't believe I didn't mention DJ. Probably one of the, one of my favorite of the group, man. A big, powerful man, So when we get him back, it's going to be even better.
When you watch the film from last year, you see a lot of times like Hutch was one step away, or like had an arm on a quarterback, was so close. And it was just that one step. Guys like DJ Reader, Marcus Davenport, pushing everything kind of his way. You expect a huge season from Hutch just because of what you did, helping him along that line. But then the guys in the secondary that you talked about too, maybe giving him an extra step. Could this be a huge year? Because you look at him in training camp, I mean, he was terrific. I mean, he was a handful, and I just, from the outside looking in, it looks like he's set up for a huge year.
No, of course. I totally agree, and I wouldn't be surprised, if this guy has, whatever the amount of sacks it is, but he's been awesome all camp, man, and he's gotten better and better each day. It's been amazing to watch, and yes, those guys will help, Aleem and Levi, and then Davenport with the push on the opposite side of Hutch, and then Reader and all those guys are going to help tremendously, but he doesn't need a whole lot of help. Right. He's a pretty good football player.
You guys still pinch yourselves a little bit when he was sitting there at number 2? I know you guys couldn't kind of get the card in fast enough, but he's been everything that you guys thought when he was there at number 2, right?
You know, the guy is the thing that stands out about him is his intangibles. You know, he's tough. You know, he plays hard. You know, he's competitive. You know, and along with that, he's a good athlete and a good football player. But the thing that stands out the most is the intangibles. That guy loves to play the game, and you can see it, man. And it's he cares. You know? So that means a lot to us.
What a perfect fit for this city, this team,
no doubt.
This defense, AG. All right, let's flip over to the other side real quick. A guy that you have some big expectations for, you know, heading into his 3rd season, Jameson Williams. And this was kind of the first offseason, start to the season. He hasn't been kind of dealing with something. It was just about ball. What have you seen from his development, and how much of a step are you guys expecting him to take?
Oh, man, he's grown tremendously, leaps and bounds as a player and as a person. Guy, clean route runner, catching the ball well. I mean, he's a touchdown waiting to happen. Yeah. He's extremely fast. He's a tough, competitive dude. You know, passionate about the game. And I, you know, obviously I know a little bit more about him being from St. Louis, but I expect big things from him. Excited to see what he's going to do this year. The growth and the maturation of him has been great to see, and we excited. You know?
Because you saw, you know, anytime he got his hand on the football, whether it was a reverse, it was running the football down the field. Like you said, he's a touchdown waiting to happen. Now you're going to see his snaps with Josh no longer here probably double, right? So that's that many more opportunities for him to get the hand on the football, right?
No question, and that's exciting to think about, because I mean, you got a guy on the field who's a threat to score at any time, and as a defensive player, you know where those guys are. All right, we got to find 9. You know, you know, we got to watch 9 going deep. So he scares defense.
And when you couple that with, you know, having to know where Gibbs is at and having to know where Montgomery's at, and then obviously Saint is Saint, right? I mean, we don't even have, but then Laporta over the middle too, and that weapon. It's just, as a defensive guy, when you look at that offense, is it just, who do I stop? I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's single covered, right? And when you have an offensive coordinator like Ben, that's got to be pretty exciting.
No question. As a defensive guy, you always try to take away what the other team does best, but you know, which you got to pick your poison with this offense. So
behind one of the best offensive lines, only too, ho hum, right?
Yeah, so excited.
All right, you signed Jared Goff this offseason. You signed Penei Sewell. Signed Amon-Ra St. Brown. Ray, why was that big for you guys? And you've been on both sides of it, right? As a player and now front office guy. So you have a great perspective on both those. Why was that so important for you guys to get done? And just what does that mean, big picture, for this football team?
You know, it speaks volumes in the locker room, you know. And you had to be in there to understand it. Because when you see your best players, the guys that show up for you week in and week out, you see the team reward them. You see the organization reward them. It tells you that the organization is going to do the right thing. But if I go out and play and do what I'm supposed to do as a player, they're going to take care of me also. So it sends volumes it sends a great message through the locker room, and you know, such a joy. And all those guys deserve their money. So you know, no, not that we did anything that they didn't deserve, but it sends volumes through the locker room.
And those young guys are like, I want to be next,
no doubt,
right? And what do I need to do to do that? So
and then, you know, they start watching those guys. And those are 3 guys that are worth people watching.
Did you notice in your talkings with free agents and stuff in the offseason how this is maybe flipped to be a destination place for some guys? Was that part of the conversation when you talked to guys?
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, when we first got here, you had to kind of, you know, try to talk guys into coming, but now, you know, they want to come, you know, so.
Makes your job a little bit easier.
Reaching out to us, you know, so, you know.
A little bit of a change. Well, let's finish with this. You've now kind of set your roots here in Detroit, and you were in that building for the playoff games. Yeah. You know the atmosphere and the excitement that's now gone around the cover of Sports Illustrated and everything else. Just what is it about? What have you learned about Detroit as a football town? Yeah. In your time here?
That's exactly what I've learned, that it is a football town. Football is first. I love it, man. The fans are so passionate. It's unbelievable. And last year was great, but I remember the first year when we was here, we won 3 games, and I remember that first Thanksgiving Day game. It was amazing,
Yeah.
It was amazing. I didn't realize the magnitude of that game, because obviously I never played in it, but it was outstanding. So the fans, the passion has been there all along. Now, last year it was on a whole nother level, man. That playoff game was outstanding, both of them, But the people here are great, man. The fans are great. I enjoy going into the city and having a meal and, greeting some of the fans. But it's been great.
It's going to be a great atmosphere Sunday night.
Oh, no doubt. Can't wait.
Well, it's really exciting to be talking about the Super Bowl, to be kicking off this week at home against a great opponent. Ray, thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate your perspective, and good luck this season.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Appreciate
thanks
you.
for having me.
Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft, and I am very happy to welcome in Jourdan Rodrigue. She does a great job with The Athletic, and she was just promoted. She is now senior writer at The Athletic. She covers the Rams and does NFL projects. She's great. Check out her stuff. She knows everything about the Rams. And Jourdan, it hasn't been very long since we've talked, right? It's a little deja vu here.
I know. It's funny. I when you popped onto my screen, I was like, I was just here.
Obviously, that was a terrific matchup between the Rams and Lions in the wild card. It really had everything, came down right to the end. Obviously, there had to be a winner, had to be a loser. It was a great story for Detroit. Came 30 minutes away from their first Super Bowl. And the NFL loved it so much, they said, heck, let's do this again week 1. And so, you're going to be back in Detroit. I just want to start with this. That atmosphere, I saw an interview with Sean McVay in the offseason, and he talked about just what kind of atmosphere that was like in Detroit. Have you ever been a part of anything like that? Has anything rivaled it in your tours around the NFL?
There have been a couple that have been close. Superdome, NFC title game at SoFi Stadium, but that was a pretty split crowd at that time. So I have to tell you, I was so moved by that atmosphere in Detroit. And I wrote about it in my column from postgame, the juxtaposition between the enormous wave of feeling and celebration and like exorcism of longstanding curses and demons by the crowd that stayed so much longer after the game was over before taking to the streets, of course, to party. And then that juxtaposing with how despondent some people in the Rams locker room were, because they really felt that if they would have won that game, they could have carried that momentum all the way to the Super Bowl. And I believe it. They were really catching their stride at the right time. Matthew Stafford was playing out of his mind. And that game was so physical, and it was so electric. And the crowd, the crowd, the Rams, when you're going into a place like that, you got to expect a hostile crowd. I say hostile as a compliment. Like, the crowd let them hear it. I mean, that was football, man. That was real football. And I had a blast.
Yeah, and it should be a great one. Obviously September 8th, next Sunday too, because you look at the preseason with Detroit, and look, the Lions were away their first 2 preseason games. They were home last week against Pittsburgh. They sold out standing room only for the preseason, Jourdan. I mean, they were causing penalties in the fourth quarter of a preseason game. There's certainly a football hangover here in Detroit, and they are excited to get back at it. And this is a great matchup. Well, let's get into the matchup a little bit. My first question, I'm just curious, where are the Rams a better football team right now than the one that the Lions saw in the wild card?
Yeah, I think they're better. They were great at running the ball by the end of that 2023 season. I think they're going to be even better running the ball now that they have Kyren Williams is going to be able to get a spell every once in a while with Blake Corum, another player that they really like, and anyone in Michigan is very familiar, obviously.
Yeah, they've heard of him around here.
With Blake Corum. He has fit right into the mix, and he and Kyren Williams will probably get a little bit of a rotation. Kyren Williams is still the lead running back on this team. Allegedly, they are better along the offensive line. They've been dealing with injuries. Another familiar face, Jonah Jackson. He's actually playing a little bit of center now that he's coming back from the injury, really? Because the Rams are missing their left tackle. Alec Jackson is suspended the first 2 games of the season. So Steve Avila, who was playing center, now is switching back to his rookie year position, left guard, because they need more help on that left side. And so this is going to be really that, in theory, because of the investments they made up front, in theory, they are better along the offensive line, but they are going to be missing some players. Rob Havenstein, right tackle, may or may not be ready to go. He's been dealing with an ankle injury that's had him out for most of camp. So that's where in theory it's better, but like in actuality, weeks 1 and 2, you might not really see it. But where they are better is at their outside linebacker position, where they really only had one full-time emerging rusher in Byron Young last season, who was a rookie at that time. They, at outside linebacker specifically, they really have added some talent there. Jared Verse, obviously their first round pick. He looks and walks the part. I walk in and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what a first round pick looks like. Because the Rams,
He was a guy I loved in that draft process.
he was
too.
outstanding. He's outstanding. And he talks. So the Lions offense is going to hear him. I mean, he is like very much like I would say a Jalen Ramsey personality. Like they are going to hear him, and he's very physical. He's got speed to power. They're going to feel him as well. This is going to be his debut because Sean McVay doesn't play starters in the preseason, and then Byron Young on the opposite side, but they have a 4 deep there now where they didn't last year with Michael Hoyt, the veteran, and then with, Brennan Jackson, who was another draft pick out of Washington State, who I think is going to surprise some people this year. They're certainly deeper at cornerback. They've got they're more experienced and more talented at cornerback, bringing in Trey White. Darius Williams is going to be healthy. And then safety is where I'm really excited to see this team play, because at safety, Chris Shula, the new defensive coordinator, he's going to be leaning into safeties in his sub packages where other coordinators have used corners and dime and nickel packages. Well, Chris Shula is going to be using safeties, and he wants bigger bodies on the field who can also move. So Cam Curl, Quentin Lake, who's going to be their star, the position star. I think he will be a star, but he will literally be in the star position. Cam Kinchins and John Johnson III. I mean, this is a deep group of DBs at this point, and if they can stay healthy, I think that's where you're going to see the most improvement on this defense.
I think that's really interesting because I think Detroit's in a similar situation, completely remade their cornerback room, their secondary. Obviously, you look at that game last year, Stafford threw for 367 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a 120 rating, and Brad Holmes looked at that and was like, okay, something's got to change here. And it was a theme at the end of the season with Detroit. Throughout the playoffs, Matthew Stafford obviously exploited it, but it's interesting that you talk about all the new faces in the secondary, some of the new pieces, because that's what Detroit's dealing with too. We didn't see those guys in the preseason either, so that'll be an interesting dynamic to this one too. Obviously experienced, really good quarterbacks, seeing brand new secondaries that each team is hoping to make a difference. So that'll be interesting. All right, maybe the tougher question of the two is where are the Rams maybe not as strong as they were going into that wild card game last year?
Well, they don't have Aaron Donald. So that is
check mark. There we go.
That is very significant. I think you're going to see more straightforward pressure from them, though, because most of what they had to do was find ways to get Aaron Donald away from double and triple teams. So you're actually going to see a little bit simpler, more straightforward pressure, at least to start with these guys. So that's a question mark. I'm curious that group. I've been really impressed with Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, Bobby Brown has taken a step forward. I've been very, very impressed with them all through the course of not just training camp, but particularly these joint practices. They are a little light up front. They have been for years. Last year, they defended the run really well still, but they had, again, Aaron Donald. So this year, I'm really interested to see, a bit concerned about how they are against the run so far early on. But that's always something I think with this group that's a work in progress anyway, because they have tended to be a little bit lighter on the interior. So that's something where it's a big question mark. I don't want to say you're always going to take a step back when you don't have the best player in the world on your team anymore. He's retired. And so I'm more so curious than willing to say they have taken a step back, because I feel like it's almost an unfair parameter to place around this group.
Yeah, I'd say.
The big question mark too for me is inside linebacker. They recently traded their former team captain and starter for 3 years, Ernest Jones, to the Tennessee Titans. Ernest was coming back from a knee issue. He missed all of the spring. And as he was absent, a couple of other players just really started playing so well, to the point where the Rams thought, okay, well, we're not going to extend Ernest Jones anyway, so this is inevitable. Let's make it immediate. That's a Les Snead saying that Brad Holmes knows very well as well. And so now the question is Troy Reeder, who has really been kind of up and down for this Rams team in his 6 seasons, and whether he can really take actually another step forward. Particularly, Ben Johnson is looking at the middle of the field. Ben Johnson is looking at these inside linebackers, and he is figuring out, which players to circle on his play sheet. And that's just going to be one of the big key matchups, in my opinion, is how that middle of the field looks, not just because there's questions at inside linebacker, but also Quentin Lake is going to be, again, playing the star. So he's going to be roaming all over that middle of the field. And I know he thinks about what happened last time with that game, the Amon-Ra catch. It was basically it's a coverage beating slant. It's basically the slant you need when you need like 5 yards, right? And it's almost unguardable. But Quentin Lake definitely remembers that. He's a team captain this year. He trained with Amon-Ra in California in the off season. Oh, wow. And so I'm like, okay, did that come up? And it's like, no, it didn't come up. I mean, why would it come up, right? You're not going to be, if you're Amon-Ra, you're not going to be like, hey, remember that, you know? But like, it is interesting because they are going to be doing different things with their safeties to help out kind of a linebacker group in question.
I know you've talked about a lot of names already, but is there a new face, whether it's maybe a free agent, whether maybe it's a young guy that maybe Lions fans don't know, but who could maybe have an impact come, Sunday night for this Rams team?
Yeah, so free agent Cam Curl. I'm not really quite sure why he became a free agent because he's one of those players. I mean, I guess, the ball skill stats, like maybe they weren't sexy or whatever, but like watching this guy play, I'm amazed. I mean, I'm a big dork over safety play anyway, as you know, and as very much has come clear in this conversation as well to the viewer and to the listener. The range that this guy has and the savvy and the awareness. And like, I watched him make plays all through camp and he just quietly goes about his day, goes about his business. But the amount of space on the field that this guy can cover, and it's like, he has no questions about where he's supposed to be. It's just so instinctual. I'm pretty astounded by him so far. I think he's going to have a really big season for the Rams.
Well, since you're such in love with safety play, you'll enjoy Brian Branch.
I'm so excited to watch Brian Branch
here
play.
In Detroit is Brian Branch a terrific rookie nickel cornerback, one of the better defenders. I think he was right there in terms of rookie of the year in terms of defensive guys. But now he's made that switch to safety. And Aaron Glenn's defense, they've said like that safety position is one in this defense that can just see the field, make a plays, has a little bit more freedom to roam around a little bit and do some of that stuff. So it'll be really interesting to see how Brian Branch translates to the safety here in Detroit. So we got two young safeties, one young safety, one veteran guy that'll certainly have our eyes, Sunday night. All right, Jourdan, maybe one or two big keys. You looked at that matchup last year. I think one of the couple things that jumped out to me was the Lions were 3 for 3 in the red zone. The Rams were 0 for 3 in a 1-point game. That's a killer. And then obviously what Detroit has done to, better their secondary, to improve the talent level, the depth there, getting all the veteran cornerbacks and drafting Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Those are obviously two big keys for Detroit. What's one or two big keys for the Rams? How do they come out on top, go on the road, and escape with a win here in Detroit? What do they have to do?
Yeah, red zone production 100% is one of my keys as well. And that needs very little more explanation with, how well you described it there. But I remember this last game when it felt like the swing was so in Detroit's favor. The Rams had totally let the crowd into it. You could tell. I mean, they were a bit unsettled. And then they hit a deep shot. I believe it was Puka Nacua downfield for the touchdown, and you could feel the oxygen just like reverse order out of like it just whooshed out of the building for a minute, right? In that small window of time, the Rams resettled and were able to recalibrate, and then that game got really fun after that. It got physical on both sides, not just the Lions sort of coming out and punching them in the teeth, and it really started to become a battle at that point. If the Rams can score early, I think that they really will make this fun way quicker than it was last time, for sure. And they're going to have to take the crowd out of it. I don't care what anyone says. The crowd is absolutely a significant factor in a game like this. And it's like, it's a smart, educated crowd in terms of they know what they're doing for like with football. Like they know when to, they know Matthew Stafford was checking into the second of the two plays that he receives in his helmet. And as he was audibling into that second play, they would get louder so that his own teammates couldn't. I mean, it's a really smart crowd. So taking them out of it early, I think, is going to be absolutely a crucial key for this Rams group.
Well, Jordan, we can expect a terrific atmosphere again. I expect it to be everybody in their seat 30 minutes before, just like it was for the wild card playoff game. And I know both of us hope that we get a good game, a close battle. And it's an important one to, teams with playoff aspirations, the NFC, and obviously we know these are important in terms of tie breaking and stuff that happens, down the road. So week 1 is important. It should be a fun one. Thank you so much for joining me. You are one of the best in the business. And again, you can follow all her stuff. Jourdan Rodrigue, she works for The Athletic. She does NFL projects there and covers the Rams, does a great job. So if you need anything Rams related, make sure you check with her. Jourdan, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Safe travels here, and it should be a fun one.
Thank you. I agree. It's going to be fun. Thank you for having me. And I hope we get another one down the road here.
I know, right? That'd be fun. Here we go. Welcome back to the 20 in the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft, and I am very happy to welcome in Fox 2 Sports Director, the voice of the Lions, Dan Miller. We're going to get into our Key to the Game segment here, but real quick, PJ Clark has been the producer for this podcast here for the last, a couple years, no longer with the franchise anymore, so we have a new
faces. There's roster turnover every year.
So I want to introduce Barrett Jones real quick. Barrett's going to come around. You can put a face with a name here. This is Barrett Jones. He's going to be producing the 20 in the Huddle podcast here. Usually he's got some good video ideas. He's going to correlate with this and stuff like this. So welcome to have you. Thanks for doing it, putting up with me for a while, and now you get a little FaceTime with that. So.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm glad Tim's on the camera. I'd break the camera, but I'm glad to produce this with Tim. It's going to be a fun season.
All right, good stuff, deal, man. All right, so now we're going to get to keys to the game.
Let's do it.
And this is a fun one, right? I mean,
come on. Your mind goes directly back to last year.
Right.
And that incredible scene at Ford Field. And now you're opening, which always brings about more emotion. You're back inside Ford Field, which is going to be nuts. Fans have an extra 7 hours to get lubed. I mean, it's going to be... Look, this is what opening weekend in the NFL is all about. You've got a really good football team here, a really good football team coming in, and you're at home. Let's do it.
And one of the big question marks, I think, and one of the exciting things for Lions fans is going to finally see this secondary, this remade secondary for the first time. Obviously they traded for Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, and free agency is going to be a big part of it. And then the two rookies, Terry Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr., they're going to play their pieces too. You have Brian Branch moving back to safety from nickel, so and they're going to be tested. I mean, this is Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford. He threw for 367 yards and 3 touchdowns the last time these two teams faced off. So I think that's really going to be one of the keys. Can this remade, new look secondary slow those weapons down for the Rams?
Yeah, and I think that's where I have some questions, and I don't think they're questions that I have for the long term because I love what they've done back there, but I think it's more for me, it's a question about where they are right now. Because if you think about it, Carlton Davis has missed time during camp. Arnold's missed time during camp. Rakestraw's missed time during camp. Branch has missed time during camp. You go up and down that secondary, Robertson's missed time. They've all missed time. So I worry about the cohesion as they go into game one against a guy like Stafford that we know what he's capable of. So really it's going to be about communicating when they're out on the field.
And that's going to be a difficult part of it too.
No doubt. And it's difficult on them too.
Yeah.
Because that crowd noise we know is a factor for the opposing offense. So that's something that I'm watching just because they haven't had a lot of time on task together during camp. And we know what kind of challenge Matthew is, and we know what kind of challenge those receivers are.
And we saw it in that game last year, 3 explosive plays, 20-plus yards in the passing game, against this Lions defense. And they looked at that and they said, look, it's obvious. This is where we have to get better. That's where they went and
it wasn't just that game. The last quarter of the season,
stretch,
you consistently had receivers busting them up for 150, 180, 200. And I think they looked at that and said, you know what, we need to overhaul this. And I think in fairness, they thought they had the year before. But Gardner Johnson goes out and E-Man goes out. And what they envisioned having last year, they really didn't have.
Right.
So I think, again, they've put a lot of assets into it, and I love what they've done. Davis is a guy that we know can play in this league. Robertson is tough as nails. I think they love him back there. And you have 2 really talented rookies, and the thought of Branch being able to move around back at safety is huge. So I love the big picture. I just want to see it get going.
And we'll see it Sunday night.
No doubt.
It should be fun. All right. Second big key to me is you look at that game last year. Detroit was such a good rushing football team all year long. I think I had it down. 14 games of at least 100 yards and a touchdown of their 17. But the Rams did a pretty good job of containing them. Detroit had 79 yards in that game. And over on the other side, too, Detroit was really good defensively, number 2 rushing defense. Rams struggled a little bit. I think they had 68 yards. To me, we know the quarterbacks are talented, right? We know the wide receivers are talented. They can make plays there. But to me, I think an important part of this, too, is who's going to control the tempo with the run game, too? And can those Detroit running backs kind of get off, set the tempo? And who's going to be a little bit more versatile? Who's going to be a little bit more dynamic in the run game in this one? I think it's a big key.
Yeah, I think the Rams have questions on both lines. Not that they may not have the answers there, but I think there's some unknowns for them. There's a guy missing that'll be in the Hall of Fame in 5 years. Aaron Donald, not playing. So he retired. So that gives them a new look. But they were already moving in some young guys last year. They were already replenishing that defensive line. And they did it again, going out, and their top 2 draft picks, both out of Florida State, are guys that are going to be on that defensive line. So I think when you look at where they are, I think the Lions, we know they're going to try to run the football. We know Ben wants to establish that run, utilize that offensive line, set up the pass off the run. So I think it's going to challenge that Rams defensive line to see if they're ready to hold up against it. On the other side, look, they've had some injuries to both their tackles. They're talking about moving Jonah Jackson to center. Yeah. That offensive line could have a whole different look for L.A., but again, go back and look at the last half of last season, what Kyron Williams was able to do. Over the last 7 games, he averaged 120-plus yards per game, over 5 yards a carry. They would love to take the pressure off of Stafford and set Stafford up with that play-action game. So they're going to try to establish the run. The Lions, as you said, were elite last year against the run, and I think they believe in some ways they're going to be better. Reeder, will figure out his status, but Levi, the way that he's played, and they're counting on him. Aleem is back and healthier than he was at the end of last year. So I think there's a lot to like about those matchups. Mm-hmm. I really want to see them unfold because I think there's some unknowns in there, which you usually get in the first game of the season.
It was interesting. I asked Dan Campbell, too, about, not having Aaron Donald and scheming that for the first time. And he said, well, wait a minute. They've got some young guys there that are pretty good. I mean, you talk about Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, who's a guy I liked in the draft, Braden Fisk, a guy I liked in the draft, too. Bobby Brown. They've got some young guys that have some juice that can still get after it. So, again, it's going to put a lot of pressure on this Detroit offensive line, who we expect will be just as good as they were last year. This run game, which was top 5 in the league. It's going to be an interesting matchup there, kind of that old guard, those veteran offensive linemen against some of these young, defensive linemen that got some juice for the Rams. It's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I credit the Rams because they could see this coming, and you could see kind of the churn beginning on their defense where they were going to younger guys, and those guys got some experience last year. Guys like Kobe Turner and Heck, they got experience. They're ready to come back this year as veterans that have seen it before. So this is a team that I think believes that their defense can take a step even after losing Aaron Donald. And it's the young guys that got some experience that'll help lead the way.
All right, Dan, third key to the game to me. What are those important stats in every game, right? We talk about turnovers. Sure. We talk about third down, right? And to me, another big one is the red zone. And you just look at this game last year as a perfect example of how important this was. That was a 24-23 Lions win. The Rams were 0-3 in the red zone. The Lions were 3 for 3. That was the difference. One of the big differences in that game. I think it's going to be key again. And Aaron Glenn talked about that being part of kind of his process this year of looking at areas of where they needed to improve. They were 29th last year in red zone efficiency. I think 66%. That's an area that they've got to be better, and I think that this is a good opportunity to show it here, against the Rams.
Yeah, and that was big for the Lions to be able to cash in on those opportunities. One of them came on a 4th down pass to Laporta, which was huge. But also you could see defensively some of that was them pressuring Stafford and making him throw the ball before they wanted to, and that's always going to be a big key. So, look, it's about being opportunistic. It's about taking an opportunity to not put 3 on the board and put 7 on the board. You look at that early drive last year where Stafford got him right back down there. Lions pressured him. He wasn't able to complete the pass. They ended up with 3. It's 7-3, and then it's 14-3 before you can blink. So, it gives you the opportunity to get a jump on somebody. I think both on the scoreboard and mentally when they're settling for 3 instead of 7. So when you get down there, A, take care of the football, B, come out of there with 7 if you can. And I think that's one thing that the Lions are good at. And look, if the Lions defense is what they want to be, which is better against the pass, better rushing the passer, then that's going to show up in that area. Yeah. I mean, look, it's not hard to figure out where they struggled last year. They were second against the run, 27th in the league in defense. Tells you they really struggled against the pass.
They did.
Make quarterbacks uncomfortable, and that's a good place to do it. When you get down there and everything's compacted, don't give them time to make a decision.
Those are the keys to the game.
That's right.
He is the voice of the Lions. It's going to be a fun atmosphere in there. It's going to be crazy. Look, they're talking Super Bowl around Allen Park now. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. We haven't gone into too many years like this, and we've been doing this for a while. It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, no, this is amazing. Last year, the end of it was amazing. Those are games and moments that I'll never forget. They were standalone moments in my career to see the city lit up like that and the electricity. And you know what? I think it's going to be just as electric for this opening game. I think people have been looking forward to this. They're excited about this team. So, man, let's roll it out there. Let's go.
I'm excited. He's Dan Miller. I'm Tim Twentyman. Thanks for joining.